Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Make sure you like and subscribe. Give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram. Become a member to the channel and leave that donation for that fried rice and chicken wings. Hey, yo, check this out.
Get in the ring with Canelo Alvarez. Terrence is not going to see anything that he hasn't seen before. No, he hasn't seen this beast on fight night, but he's seen versions of this beast for a very, very, very long time. People have said that he's a blown-up 147-pound fighter. If you remember, he said it was hard for him to make 147 when he fought Errol Spence Jr. I was like, yo, how is that possible? I didn't realize, he was really doing everything that's needed to gain the weight properly. Most fighters don't know how to gain weight and fit into a weight class properly. He's done that.
Okay, so Sean Porter. I think most of you guys would feel that Sean Porter is pretty qualified to talk about boxing, talk about weight cuts, weight gain, because he's been there and he's done it. But he said something that was interesting, talking about Terrence Crawford putting on weight the right way. Now, let's understand this. Crawford isn't necessarily having to eat a whole lot of foods high in carbs and shit to gain weight, like how Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, just to stay at 147. They just had to eat and eat and eat because they were naturally smaller guys, smaller frames. Crawford is a guy who walks around much heavier than 168, so he does have to cut weight to get down to 168. But it's not a bad, atrocious, life-threatening weight cut to get down to 168 pounds. But there's still the right kind of diet, supplementation that's needed and necessary in order for Crawford to get situated and acclimated to 168 pounds and to be effective on fight night, okay? So what that tells me is that Crawford should not be dehydrated. Crawford should be firing on all cylinders. But what about Canelo? Maybe Canelo now comes in the ring and, his weight cut is going to be definitely a lot more difficult than Crawford's, because word is Canelo walks around close to 200. I don't know how true that is. You don't really see him much outside of when he has a fight coming up or he's training. I always look the same to me, but they say Canelo definitely cuts. He has to go through a pretty arduous weight cut to get to 168. So De La Hoya talked about it. You can't take nothing that dude says serious when it comes to Canelo. But he actually said this when they were on, when he was trying to amend the relationship, you know what I mean? When he wanted to amend the relationship and he wanted to look like possibly work with Canelo, but Canelo ain't going for that. But that being said, when it comes to Canelo and Crawford, fight fans, everyone's excited about this fight. Fight fans love highlight reels, they love highlight moments, and they love the idea that Crawford could get viciously knocked out by Canelo, or Crawford as the underdog could shock the world and, put the bing-bings on Canelo. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think if Canelo is somewhat dehydrated, because for some reason he overtrained, there was some miscalculations, Canelo's going to have a tough time. But the bottom line, fight fans, no matter who you're rooting for, no one's going to care, because when you start seeing these guys getting wobbled in the ring, fight fans are going to get up out their seats. And for those who don't see the fight, when they're looking at the highlights, looking at images on YouTube, they're going to create a whole lot of clicks, you know what I'm saying? But the one thing, a single moment of being hurt, whether it's a slip, a rope save, late round flash wobble, or perfectly timed counter, let me just tell you, it's not the final verdict on a fighter's durability, okay? In boxing history, there's been countless They had countless examples of high-level fighters getting clipped, getting wobbled, being saved by a rope, and then they come back to win. Y'all saw what happened to Floyd Mayweather, right? When he fought Chop Chop Corley. You saw what happened to Floyd when he fought Shane Mosley. You saw what happened to Leonard when he decided to return to boxing. He was fighting that guy, I think it was Donnie Lalonde, whatever his last name was. Tall, white guy, strong, young guy. You can hurt them guys, but some fighters have the ability to up it. And they come back to win the fight after getting hurt or getting saved somehow by the ropes, the referee. And they don't just come back to win, they come back to win decisively or knocking the opponent out. So we should treat those incidents as data points, not destiny. Now, the people like to talk about, I don't say nothing much about it, but they like to talk about Canelo. Yeah, he fought Jose Miguel Cotto. Then Crawford fought Yuriorkis Gamboa. Both of them guys got wobbled. Both of them turned, the Puerto Ricans were dancing salsa in the ring. Was it dramatic to see Canelo and Crawford get hurt like that? You know, yes, it was. But what happened? They turned those moments into proof of concept for their toughness rather than confirmation for fatal weaknesses. Canelo was 19, man, fighting a more experienced fighter. Shit like that's supposed to happen. Crawford was 135 pounds. Now we know that man should have never been at 135 pounds. But the bottom line is, Crawford and Canelo both found a way to win. Just understand this. When you think about those two fights, when Canelo fought when he fought Cotto's brother, right there, it's like Ray J, that's Brandy's brother. But when he fought Cotto's brother, Miguel Cotto, Jose, was it Jose? Yeah. No. Yeah, it's Jose Miguel Cotto, right? Then Miguel Cotto. But anyway, when he fought Miguel Cotto, let me tell you something. He took a hard shot in the opening frame. Very hard shot. Looked in trouble for the moment, but Canelo, like Miguel Cotto, he doesn't show much emotion on his face. You know what I'm saying? He stayed composed, carried the experience forward to a career elite level, largely unbroken toughness. And then with Crawford, yeah, his name is Jose, is the junior. Anyway, Cotto's brother. You guys know who I'm talking about now. But the same thing, Crawford with Yuriorkis Gamboa, he learned from that shit. You know what I'm saying? He didn't allow that to slow him down. That fight with Crawford and Yuriorkis Gamboa, that shit was a thriller. Amazing fight. If you guys haven't seen it, at least go watch the highlights. That was one of those things where you seen Gamboa clipping Crawford. You know, winning rounds against Crawford, man. And Crawford was hurt. He was hurt. He was dancing salsa in the ring. But all he did was like Miguel Cotto, like Canelo. Took a deep breath, steadied himself, made the adjustments, and finished Gamboa in spectacular fashion. Spectacular fashion. So when you see a guy like Canelo show the resilience that he's shown at a lighter weight, 19 years old, no kind of IQ and experience like what he has now against a more seasoned guy, that speaks volumes, and there's no surprise to see that he's in a position he's in right now. And we see a guy like Crawford, who was, severely dehydrated, fighting an Olympic gold medalist, undefeated fighter, a guy who was destroying everybody down at 135, and to see Crawford come back, make the adjustments, and get him up out of there, and do it in his hometown, Omaha, Nebraska. What that tells you is those weren't flukes, you know what I mean? Those weren't, you look at their records now, what they've done since then. It just tells you it's a demonstration of both of these guys being able to recover, their ring IQ and the finishing instinct. So they're bringing that into their fight together on September 13th. And that's why, there was one or two bozos saying that they think Crawford and Canelo is going to be a dud of a fight. I'm like, how? It could be boring if they both just try to counterpunch all night and no one wants to let their hands go, but too much on the line. Too much on the line for Crawford and Canelo. to not let their hands go. You know what I'm saying? But things we should really table when it comes to performance. When you look at Crawford and Canelo, and although they had their hurt moments, because everybody brings it up, they proved their chins. Okay? And I just think when you start trying to figure out clever ways to measure durability, I think let's take a look at what a fighter does after the adverse moment. And that's why a guy like Jerome Butsinis, the verdict's still out on him. He hasn't really faced adversity like Canelo and like Crawford. You know, but if a guy's dealing with adversity, does he keep taking punishment? Does he come back and grind? Or do they just finish fights? You see, that guy, Canelo and Crawford, man, them guys produce major wins after opponents, you know, who rocked them, you know what I'm saying? And that matters more than just those guys getting wobbled and everybody laughing at them and wanting to bring it up and poke them in the eyeball and say, remember when you got hurt? Okay. What did they do after they got hurt? The thing is, Crawford has since moved through elite opponents and had stoppage after stoppage after stoppage. And Canelo has done the same thing through multiple divisions. Long-term champion, track record of not just dishing out the power, but absorbing power. Resumes scare the shit out you, right? When you take a look at Crawford's resume and Canelo's resume. Start to turn that narrative from what some of these people still want to say, oh, they're both fragile. Nah, maybe they're just battle-tested. Because you don't see that happening to those guys now. But I'm just telling you, you got a super middleweight event taking place on September 13th. Canelo versus Crawford. And I just hope Canelo's not dehydrated. You see, Crawford doesn't have to cut a whole lot of weight. He's fighting at the weight he should be at. Canelo still has to cut. So a couple of interesting things about dehydration is, you know, how does the body respond? How does the body recover? How does the fighter perform on fight night? Because I tell you what, Crawford's not going to be dehydrated, I'll tell you that. And although there's a lot of skill that Canelo has, that Crawford has, IQ that they have, I think if for some reason Canelo gets hit and hurt, we may have to come back to this conversation about dehydration and overtraining. But look, skill, ring IQ, and finishing instinct is something that Canelo has, something that Crawford has. You know what I mean? If somebody gets hurt, we just got to understand turning a fight around after being hurt. It's not always just about chin, but if you're dehydrated, how much can you depend on your chin? But then you got the composure, the ability to reset, tactical changes, and then, you know, opportunism. So that's how you can turn a fight around. But I still think in this fight, they're going to need chins. They're going to need chins, man. And you go back again, Crawford's performance against Gamboa. That's a real good textbook example. You weather the storm, you change angles, you exploit openings, and you finish. And then with a guy like Canelo, he has the same toolkit. And we may need to see Crawford and Canelo both try to weather the storm against each other, trying to change angles, trying to exploit openings, and then trying to finish their opponent, or just finish and get to the final bell and try to, you know, skirt out a decision win. But I'm just going to tell you, you know, we could talk about Crawford, talk about Canelo. Canelo's got head movement, excellent counters, body work. And one thing about Canelo, and Crawford has it, but I think Canelo has just an iron will. Like, you got to shoot, you got to kill Canelo, man. And Crawford has it too. But Canelo, you can just see there's something inside that guy, man. But at the end of the day, they both show they can be hurt, yet still execute offense and win by KO. And I just think with a guy like Crawford and Canelo. That's the strongest evidence against the one shot and you're out argument. However, if Canelo's dehydrated, how much can he turn a fight around? And if he does turn it around, can he sustain that momentum? That's a big conversation. Crawford's at 168 now. You know what I mean? Visibly bigger, man, more muscular frame, but he has functional muscle. That shit matters. Y'all don't know what that is. Look up the definition of functional muscle. See, people that see it, he just put on mass. He put on mass. No, look up the definition of functional muscle. And you guys will have a much better understanding of what the hell Crawford was doing over the last year with his team. He's not the same. Look, Crawford's not the same lightweight. Not the same welterweight version that's stepping up. But expect him to have that lightweight, welterweight speed. But now super middleweight power. All that muscle he added on, let me tell you something. It's going to carry some power. And it's going to help him to perform a lot better had he not put on muscle over a year, 13 months instead of 13 weeks. So Crawford, I'm just telling you, I think he's going to be able to resist Canelo's strength. But we won't find out till fight night. And there's still a lot of people who feel that, that's going to make Crawford vulnerable. I don't think the muscle necessarily makes him vulnerable. But it does narrow down the old, size / power gap that, all of the skeptics keep, trying to point to when smaller fighters move up. Crawford's team is different. Crawford's at a different level. He's not going to come out here and they're not going to miscalculate a misstep as far as Crawford and putting on size and making sure that he can get in there and fire on all cylinders against Canelo. The side of Crawford, look, side of that guy at 168 pounds reduces the assumptions, at least for some, that he's going to get eaten alive by the Mexican crocodile or get chopped apart by the Mexican buzzsaw Canelo. And for me, I think if Crawford slowed just a fraction, he's in trouble. However, if Canelo, seeing that Crawford doesn't have to kill himself to make 168, and Canelo still has to really do a hard weight cut to make 168, what if Canelo foils the plot? He got a guy Crawford in there. He has slowed down just by a fraction, but he's able to resist Canelo's power. And then Canelo has the upper hand. Looks like he's about to land a big KO, but all of a sudden Canelo just develops dead leg because of the dehydration. And Crawford happens to touch him up, and then Canelo's punch resistance isn't what he was accustomed to, and now all of a sudden the fight's pretty damn even. Or Crawford, again, to get the fans out to see, he wobbles and hurts Canelo. People need to understand, man, weight cutting and dehydration, man, it's a live issue for the fight coming up here in the next, 6-7 days? You get these guys, man, now there's a difference now. You can gradually take the weight off, gradually cut weight. If you time it just right, you'll be okay. Now, if you're rapidly cutting weight, that's different now, you know what I'm saying? So rapid weight cutting by dehydration is highly relevant to any fight where one or both men are cutting significant weight for a division. It doesn't look like, I know Crawford didn't, the way he's managed his weight, nothing was rapid. With Canelo, I don't think so. But it looks like Crawford definitely took more time to recover, to work on his weight issues, and to come into the ring 100%. You don't really know much about what Canelo was doing because they've been so quiet over there in their camp. It's kind of hard to say. But scientific reviews and papers show that losing as little as 2% of body mass through dehydration can impair endurance, can impair power, can impair cognitive functions. That's just at 2% of body mass. Now, larger losses, 3 to 5% and above, produce bigger decrements and increase of risk of concussion-related problems. And this is where I think Canelo is at. I think he's actually losing 3 to 5%. You know what I'm saying? of his weight through dehydration just to make 168, and that's a huge problem. If Crawford lands on Canelo, and Canelo, to make weight, had to dehydrate himself to a certain point, he could get concussed. Although people don't want to believe that, it could happen. So the bottom line, if we, in other words, a fighter who enters the ring still partially dehydrated can have slower reaction time. Crawford's not going to be partially dehydrated. Canelo could be. And that slow reaction time could be all bad because now he can't counterpunch the way he wants to. Canelo's best chance is, like I've been saying, come out there as soon as the fight starts and just jump on Crawford. Catch Crawford cold and try to get him up out of there. Canelo could get him out of there in the first round. But I'm just telling you that the longer the fight goes, especially if Canelo has slower reaction time, reduced punch output, he's already very economical. All of a sudden now, because of the damn weight cut, his punch output is reduced. That's crazy. And then we're talking about the cognitive functions. Now he has impaired decision-making capabilities. You know what I mean? It's just a conversation. And you may say, well, what about Crawford? Crawford, why would we have this conversation about Crawford being dehydrated? What are you talking about? That's stupid. At 147, yeah. 154, yeah. 168, no. For Canelo, yeah. Yeah, we probably should. And you know what, to be honest with you, maybe that's why Canelo just couldn't up it against these guys in his last 4 or 5 fights. Because Canelo dehydrated. Yeah, he rehydrates to a point to where he can control the pace and then he's comfortable and move and kind of just plods along, and that's why he doesn't push. Because he's dehydrated, man. You know what I'm saying? And even he knows that with him being dehydrated, he's slower. That's why his punch output is where it is. And then he has a worse tolerance to blows. And that's why he doesn't want to get into mash-up, crash-ups unless it's all one-sided in his favor. Because he knows if someone hits him, he can get concussed. So, hey, you can not like what I'm saying, that's cool, but these are evidence-based trends seen across sports and combat athletes. And I think when you think about reduced punch output, slower reaction time, impaired decision-making, worse tolerance to blows, when I think about that, I think about Canelo and his last 4 or 5 fights. Crawford has a real chance here, But at the same time, I understand Canelo being a favorite. But, Crawford may have, improved punch resistance for this fight. And I tell you what, that shit matters because he's going to need it. If Crawford truly doesn't have to make that punishing dehydration-based cut to 168, which sounds like he does not, let me tell you something. He's going to enter the ring closer to his natural hydration and neutral baseline. That provides advantages, big-time advantages for Terrence Crawford. Faster reflexes, better balance, normal, intracranial cushioning, with that fluid surrounding that brain. More reliable punch output, and Crawford is going to need that. Out of everything, he's going to need that intracranial cushioning more than anything, because I think at some point in time, Canelo may catch up to him and touch him a few times. It only takes one of Canelo's shots to end Crawford. But those physiological advantages matter when you're talking about absorbing and returning force at the highest level. So in short, you know what I'm saying? You think about Canelo hitting Crawford, and Crawford, he's got to be able to return fire. But not cutting aggressively, it helps the fighter's punch resistance. Helps their reaction time and recovery between rounds. And Crawford is definitely going to need that, you know what I'm saying? So when I look at it, I'm like, could Canelo instead be the fighter who's negatively affected by weight cut and dehydration? Now, Canelo's fought at 168 before. That's where he competes. That's where he says he's the most comfortable. He's done the business. I think it's 18 months, cleaned out the whole division. But I just wonder if the fact that they're so concerned about Crawford's speed, everything that Crawford brings to the table. I wonder if Canelo's camp is trying to get an edge with a tight cut. You know what I'm saying? Or they want so bad to make sure that Canelo has the kind of speed to be able to catch up to Crawford that they mismanage his rehydration. He could emerge from the scale lighter and not fully reconstituted. That would be a viral moment if Canelo weighs in at 165 instead of 168 bang on. That shit's going to go viral. You know, in boxing, they say, man, just half a pound makes a difference with a weight cut. You know how hard it is for guys that try to get off the last pound, last half a pound, last quarter of a pound? It's like damn near impossible. But all I'm saying is if something is mismanaged with Canelo and his rehydration, I just think the scenario put a guy like Crawford who's looking chiseled and fully rehydrated, didn't have to drain himself, didn't have to starve himself. I think Crawford now has a relative, physiological advantage. He had a quicker head movement, clearer processing, possibly a better capacity to handle repeated combinations. Now, this is not a claim that Canelo will dehydrate for sure because, one thing we know is Canelo has brilliant people on his team, and he's been fighting at 168 for a while and doesn't seem to have, at least, I've never concluded that he's had struggled with dehydration, but when you understand what dehydration does to you, Canelo kind of fits that bill, So maybe there is some truth to that. And maybe we're exposing it. The more research we're doing, the more conversation we have, maybe we're starting to understand. Canelo should probably be at 175, but those guys up there are probably too big for him. So he's at 168 where he's still cutting more than what he would want to. But one thing I'll tell you for sure, man, is I'm not saying Canelo's, dehydrating himself, even though it kind of looks like he is. But when it comes to that weight strategy, it's a real variable, man. As far as, but direction, the momentum's going to swing. Because we're talking about two elite fighters, and we're talking about elite margins. So neither one of them can afford to give up an inch, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just telling you, we're talking about science now, so science is going to show the direction of the effect when the dehydration is present. So if Crawford happens to get Canelo up out of there or hurt him badly, I'm 100% sure dehydration is a word that's going to start getting thrown around. I have no doubt that's going to be the case. We just got to wait and see, because if Crawford is the one showing the burst, if he's the one showing the angles, and he's the one showing the timing, we know. But it's also bigger and not drained. Expect a mobile, southpaw, technical assault, lateral movement, counter lefts, high-quality ring generalship that's going to force Canelo to try to work for openings. The problem is Canelo's path is to use, head movement, powerful counters, and body work to stop Crawford's rhythm and create short, heavy bursts. But if Canelo's trying to go speed for speed with Crawford, that shit is just stupid. And if anyone's compromised by dehydration, let me tell you something. All this talk I'm giving you sounds good for Crawford and Canelo, but it ain't gonna matter, because even if Crawford, for some reason, with the weight, whether he's fully rehydrated but it slows him down, or he's dehydrated, or Canelo, who I think is the one who'll probably be dehydrated, but slower hands now, fuzzy vision. Now Crawford can't, up his punch output to what he needs. It looks like he needs to throw about 15 more punches around just to, if you look at historically the punch outputs, and you really try to understand what he needs to do to keep a beast like Canelo off of him. I don't know. What if his punch output is low? I'm just telling you, that fight could tilt in either's favor. You know what I mean? But if both come in fully hydrated and sharp, then it becomes a classic stylistic chess match, which is what most of us are hoping to get. Power, precision, defense. The bottom line, man, when it comes to Crawford and Canelo is don't over-index on a decade-old wobble as proof of a chronic weakness, because I think Canelo and Crawford both could get wobbled in this fight. Oh, man, people going to have heart attacks, boy. If Canelo gets wobbled, his fans going to jump in the river butt naked and with man-eating crocodiles and try to swim across that shit. If Crawford gets wobbled, his fans are going to do the same thing. Strip butt naked, jump into a river with man-eating crocodiles and try to swim to the other side. So I just think it's important to look at the full picture, because anything can happen. But I just think it just proves these guys have a lot of resilience. Look at what Crawford did to Gamboa after getting hurt. Talking about a guy taking an adverse moment and turning that into a win by using timing and counters. And they're saying that this is what Crawford has to do when he fights Canelo, because many people expect Canelo to hurt Crawford. But he may just show you that he still has that old Crawford in him that fought Gamboa. And he can turn that adverse moment to a big win. And that big win is not out of the question, especially if Canelo's dehydrated. But at the same time, you may hurt Canelo, but you would have to think he was dehydrated for that Cotto bout too, wasn't he? And you saw what happened to him. Put the bing-bings on him, finished the fight. And Canelo's subsequent career trajectory just shot through the goddamn clouds, didn't it? My boy learned and reinforced his ability to handle power and reset mid-fight. So I just think these outcomes are stronger evidence about both of these guys and their durability, weight management, nutrition, training, commitment to excellence. It's a lot more to them than just these highlight reel wobbles, because what they showed you is that they can maintain their composure and that they can up it if they have to. So stop treating them, the old wobbles, as career-ending diagnosis. You know what I'm saying? Instead, watch how each fighter looks in camp and at the official weigh-ins and face-offs. Pay attention to the hydration and weight management stories in the weeks before the fight. You know, that's a real indicator. The bottom line, man, tactical, high-stakes bout that we're going to get with Canelo and Terence Crawford. The added size of Crawford, potential advantage. Don't know if it's going to be the deciding factor. But I will tell you, the fact that he doesn't have to cut as aggressively as he has before, it's got to tilt the conversation in favor of Terence Crawford. And especially being able to handle Canelo Alvarez's power, you know. Better than being, smaller and dehydrated. But at the end of the day, Canelo, that experience, he can counterpunch too. Come through tough moments, man. He's got the track record of figuring things out. This ain't going to be no simple mismatch, you know what I'm saying? So don't let these highlight clips and narratives or single hurt moments replace, which I think most of y'all won't be, but, sober evaluations of training camps, hydrations, tactics, and evidence about the physiological weight cutting. I definitely feel that this fight is going to give us everything that we're hoping for. Who wins the fight? Canelo should be the favorite. I just have a feeling Crawford, man, is not going to be there to be hit the way Canelo would like. And I think down the stretch, I do think Canelo's the one who's going to be a bit dehydrated. He will rehydrate. He's always done it. He's always looked really good at 168, looks comfortable. But again, when you start thinking about a guy who his punch output is low, his reaction time is a little bit slower. When you start thinking about some of the signs of dehydration in a fighter, and you look at Canelo, he has shown some of those signs in his last 4 fights. Anyway, I think Crawford has a huge opportunity. I think Canelo has a huge opportunity. Can't wait for this fight to come, man. I'm going to try to give y'all about 5 videos a day, but it's tough. I'm about to go fishing right now. Y'all keep cool, enjoy the content, and remember, I don't care who wins. I just enjoy boxing and talking about it. Keep cool, I'm in the breeze.